Hello, I'm Robin. Pronouns she, they. Okay, so, well, it seems disrespectful comments have started. In my video where I talked about why I transitioned, someone in the comments called me a fool and said, "Who told you you could change gender?" Whilst that comment in itself, that came from a place of disrespect, I think the question itself is a reasonable one. So I'm going to give my answer to that question. Nobody told me I could change gender back in my teenage years when I began cross-dressing, and whilst these were not really experiments as such, my actions did inform me as to my gender to a certain extent that, well, perhaps not, but certainly that I liked cross-dressing. It informs me of that. Decades ago, there were a few TV programs that particularly interested me, and the topic of living as a person of the opposite sex, as it was described. I don't remember if the term transgender was used, but I was at the very least informed through some of these programs that one could have an operation if they suffered from gender dysphoria that would alter the genitals to approximate those of a person of their non-natal sex, essentially. So there we are. That informed me to research more fully, and now we're talking decades later, of course. I became aware that it's a service offered by the NHS in the UK, the National Health Service. I also became aware of hormone therapy. If I was not already aware of that beforehand. Now, hormone therapy obviously is what has made changes to my body to make it more congruent with my gender identity. I've got breasts, and fat has redistributed in my face a bit, and stuff like that. So the NHS is the government funded, fully sanctioned body that provides all non-private medical healthcare services within the UK. So essentially that's the answer to the question. Who told me I could transition? The primary healthcare service of this country told me that I can transition. The government essentially told me I can transition. So there we are. But let's go a bit further. You can't just turn up at the GP's surgery and ask for hormones. Well, you can try. You won't get them. Not in the UK, at least. One has to ask to be referred to the Gender Identity Service, in my case the Welsh Gender Service, which begins a process for which there's a long wait, in my case 2 years, before you will be seen by them. You then get an appointment with a psychologist that lasts about an hour and a half, and it is the psychologist who decides whether you fit a diagnosis of gender incongruence. Not gender dysphoria in this case, gender incongruence, and whether hormone treatments are in your best interest. The medicines and quantities of those medicines are then set by an endocrinologist later on in the process, but that's another answer to the question. The psychologist told me that I could transition because he told me that I fit the diagnosis of gender incongruence. I mean, I already knew that. I knew what the criteria were. They're published on the website. You can check them for yourself. You can see if you match those criteria. I think you've got to match at least 2 of about 7 or 8. And yeah, I mean that was me. Still is, obviously. Now in Wales the wait's come down to about 1 year now, which is better. And is that it? Well, it's not if you want surgery, and that requires 2 further conversations with psychologists, both of whom have to be satisfied that surgery is in your best interest. The WPATH standards of care, I think, now only require 1, but the NHS hasn't yet caught up with those changes. And for me, these 2 appointments with psychologists produced 2 further diagnoses of gender incongruence and gender dysphoria in this case. So that put me on the waiting list for a surgery that I'm still waiting for. So, I mean, I've said before, I've had 4 diagnoses of gender incongruence. The one that I haven't discussed was provided by a private medical care. That was a psychologist that operates within the Gender Care organisation. Now that basically consists of NHS doctors that also provide private care, and because they provided the first diagnosis of gender incongruence that I had, and then I had an appointment with an endocrinologist under that private system, because they work for the NHS as well, and they apply the same standards as the NHS. My GP surgery was able to fill the prescriptions. So it's called shared care. As far as I'm aware, Gender Care is the only service through which you can have that shared care. There's another one, at least, called Gender GP that I believe doesn't. NHS practices don't like working with them. So just to give you an idea of costs, the consultation with the psychologist, I think I paid £300 for that. I paid £250 for a consultation with the endocrinologist. I only needed 1. Initial changes are done by email, but I think you have to have an appointment every 8 months or 9 months or something like that. I did have an appointment for my next one, but I was transferred over to the Wales Gender Service before I needed that, so I was able to cancel that. I had a second consultation with the psychologist. That was much shorter, kind of like a how are you getting on, is everything proceeding in the way you want it to, do you have any problems, and that sort of thing. And that was all fine. That was another £80. Oh yeah, and it's not just prescriptions being filled by the GP service. There were bloods done as well, and they were done by the GP service as well. So because it's shared care, it's not like if you do everything privately, then you have to pay for your bloods and you have to pay for your prescriptions too. Doing it through Gender Care meant that I only had to pay for the consultations. Anyway, that's just a little bit more knowledge. I'm wearing this just because I've been performing on stream just before I recorded this. And hope this was helpful. As usual, please be respectful in the comments. If you're not respectful in the comments, I will be deleting your message. And please don't feed any trolls that happen to be there, but do please feel free to ask whatever questions you wish. I'll see what I can do to help. There's quite a few transgender people on YouTube. I don't know if there are any 50-year-olds, so getting information from an older person might be something that is a bit more helpful to you. But anyway, that's it for now. Have a good one, and I'll try and record another video next week.